In this session, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into one of the features of MVIS. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits and the value added with MVIS. And then we're going to talk about some of the future enhancements we can expect in the next release. So one of the important features about MVIS is the Swagger Open API. So let's talk a little bit more about Swagger. So when we first imported our U2 REST servers, as a Swagger definition was automatically generated. So this then allowed us to use the Swagger UI immediately to test the functionality of the REST endpoints that have been developed and imported. Swagger UI clearly documents the endpoints available, how they are defined, what inputs are required, and responses and error codes returned. Through the Swagger editor, you can generate command line clients in many different languages, such as Python, JavaScript, etc., etc. And this assists with continuous integration, where all changes can quickly be tested via automation frameworks. MVIS doesn't only generate Swagger definitions for your applications, but it also provides a number of admin APIs, which can be used to automate administration processes within MVIS. And in the future, we will also look to generating code stubs within MVIS from an imported Swagger Open API definition. So let's take a little more detailed look at Swagger within MVIS. There are three different views depending upon where you invoke Swagger in MVIS. So if we go to the bottom of the admin tab here and click on the MVIS admin API, that brings up our admin API. We'll come back and look at that in a bit more detail in a minute. If you go back over to the second place that we can find it, if we go to the REST server, we expand the account section, and then we click on the Swagger icon for the account. That'll bring up the Swagger editor and also a Swagger UI, which details everything for that account. Finally, if we expand an account, we can then bring up the Swagger UI for any resource which we've defined. Okay. Let's look at each of these in a bit more detail, starting with the admin API. As you can see, the available admin APIs are broken into categories with administration, status, deployment, and development. If we click on these, we can view all the APIs defined for that category. So click on MVIS admin for administration. And we can see that this is further broken down into accounts, configuration, logging, performance, etc. Let's go back, go into status. There's just a couple of statuses here. There's a health check API and a version API to tell us the version that we're running. Go into deployment. The APIs here are obviously around deploying the resources that we have defined to different web servers, or REST servers, sorry. And go into development. And we can see we've got everything to do with development: access constraints, the resources, the arrays, roles, users, etc., etc. Before we can use any of these, we actually need to provide authorization. So you would come up here and actually log in. Okay, so that's giving us our authorization. So now that we've logged in, let's go and test a couple of simple APIs. So let's do a API version. Scroll down, we've got our token there because we've authenticated. Try it out. And there's the version information in the response body. So we got under administration. Let's see, let's do a get config on the accounts. And that's returned all the accounts in our cm.ini file. Okay, so that's enough for the admin API. There's a lot there for people to investigate. So now let's move on and go back to our REST server. Let's click on the Swagger icon for the account. On the left-hand side, we can see the Swagger editor where we can edit the Swagger definition. And on the right, we've got another Swagger UI, which should show us all the resources for the account and how they're defined, and we can also test them. Other thing I wanted to show you in here, I mentioned it before, is if we go to generate client, we can generate a command line client for any one of these languages. And this can then be hooked up to an automation framework to automate testing in QA. Okay, finally, let's go and have a look at the Swagger UI within the account. And I don't think we looked at a subroutine resource yet, so let's scroll down and have a look at what subroutines we have. Okay, so I've got B rental details, click on the Swagger UI. And as I mentioned previously, we only have a post method just now, or perhaps I was going to mention that later. That'll be changing in 130. Anyway, let's go in there. See that the requires an input of rental ID. Let's try it out. We scroll down and execute that, and that should have returned a dynamic array of rental information. So that'll do for looking at Swagger for just now. Of course, our APIs can only be called from within the Swagger UI. So I'm going to jump across to Postman, and we're going to execute a few of the admin APIs. So first of all, I'm going to authenticate, and that should give me a cookie, a token. And now I can run some of the other APIs. So this one here, just session ID, etc., some other information. But it allowed me to get my token. Now I'm going to run the config plain, which is going to return my configuration information. I should already have my authorization, session ID there. So let me send that. And there we see that it's returned config information from the cm.ini file. And then finally, one last one. It's going to return all the data resources. Okay, so that's all the data resources that we got defined within this REST server. Okay. While looking at YouTube RESTful versus the benefits of MVIS, first and foremost, I want to mention that moving forward, all of our future developments on the RESTful side of the house are going to happen on MVIS. So now let's dive in a little bit and help you understand why MVIS is a much more powerful solution offering. While YouTube REST is a product you have to install and configure on the server, MVIS is a fully integrated offering that's much more modern as it's browser-based, flexible in terms of its deployment, making it easy to interface with. YouTube REST offers limited support for modern interfaces, while MVIS with Swagger, FluentD, and many other third-party services for modern application development, even in the cloud. YouTube REST provides no reporting and analysis around the performance of the system or APIs. MVIS has a whole slew of APIs just for that purpose, from understanding the health of the system, performance and metrics, to having a bunch of APIs that give you aggregate to detail levels of information on usage. U2REST is still dependent on Eclipse for its administration, whereas MVIS is web browser-based and eliminates the need to install Eclipse, aligning with a modern user experience and software development paradigms. Development with U2REST happens in silos. With MVIS, you can create RESTful services easily in seconds through the web UI, and additionally, one could develop to facilitate continuous integration and continuous delivery. U2REST is not cloud-friendly, and neither does it offer any sort of failover, scalability, or resiliency. MVIS was absolutely built with the cloud in mind. MVIS takes advantage of native cloud integrations in AWS and Azure. It also supports clustering, offering much needed scalability and resiliency for apps that run in a 24/7/365 environment. Let's quickly review the value that MVIS delivers when incorporated into your application architecture. 1, it empowers your teams to build more modern applications. By easily creating and exposing your business logic as integration points to enhance your application's value. This also helps to attract a younger talent pool to your organization. 2, MVIS also scales horizontally, which provides your application redundancy and resiliency, increasing customer satisfaction. 3, operational insights and performance monitoring is also available through MVIS, delivering continuous data to ensure there isn't any customer disruption. 4, failover support and elastic scaling allows you to set up MVIS to ensure 24/7 service and application availability. 5, MVIS is also very flexible in its deployment, supports customer deployment requirements on-prem or cloud, and it's offered as a container, eliminating OS dependencies. Lastly, as we covered earlier, this product was built with the cloud in mind. MVIS can host its common configuration files for easy cloud deployment. It also leverages many services offered by public cloud providers such as Amazon, CloudWatch, and Azure Application Insights. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the upcoming features in MVIS 1.3.0. You can expect full support for UniObject's native API. Next, we have support for OAuth authentication, and in the world of ever-increasing security concerns, that will be important. Thirdly, vanity URLs. Vanity URLs will allow us to support all the HTTP verbs for subroutine resources. As I mentioned previously, we currently only support the post verb for subroutines. And then finally, at 1.3.0, MVIS will be supported on D3 platforms. Finally, before we move on to a questions and answers session, I should talk about some of the upcoming hands-on sessions that you will might be interested in. So I said upcoming, but the first two on the list here have already been recorded, and the recording is available upon request if you reach out to us. On May the 12th, there'll be a session for upgrading your WebDE applications to MVIS. And then moving on to the future, these ones haven't actually been fixed with a date yet. Multi-value app flexibility with containerization and MVIS. followed by Cloudy with a Chance of MVIS, which will be around AWS Cloud, and then Cloudy with a Chance of MVIS Part 2, which will be around the Azure Cloud. And the last one on the list is Deep Insights. That's performance statistics, aggregate and per API monitoring, and the use of FluentD and other third-party tools. So with that, I'm just going to thank you for your time today and thank you for your attention, and I'll hand you back for more questions.